Hello there, welcome to Genessis Models and welcome to another live session for Here at Friday. Sorry I'm starting a little bit early, I'm just really eager to get going. Tonight we're going to be working on, let's just maybe move playing cameraman a little bit. Tonight we're going to be working on, as we're working through the Wellington, which, if you remember last week, we did the final stage of the camo. We did some nice post shading as well. Tonight we're going to be working on black. Now black is sort of like one of those colors that people find a little bit tricky, sort of like white and black. How do you sort of weather them, getting all that like pre-shading, post-shading, bleaching going on when you're using black? Because if you know a bit about bleaching, post-shading, pre-shading, you use black and white to do these bits of pre-shading, post-shading, bleaching and all that kind of stuff. So when you come to actually use black and white, it's a little bit more tricky, a little bit different, and we're going to show you how to do black tonight. Now there is other ways of doing black. I'm going to show you one particular way of doing it. It's quite cool, quite easy, and it's kind of nothing new really. You've just got to think about it a little bit differently, but as I say, there are different ways, but I'm going to show you one tonight. But first off, a little bit of masking we need to do before we crack on with that. So let's play cameraman again and bring you round. Switch the camera angle, there we go. Right, also feel free throughout this live session to get questions and answers up in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer any of them that you might have. You might be working on a project right now and you need a little bit of help with it. Let me know and I will answer them for you, or even just let us know what you're working on. Maybe you want a shout out, and I'll be more than happy to give you guys a shout out if you want. So just a quick one on the masking, because as you can see, I've already done a lot on it. I didn't want to spend too much time live showing you your masking and stuff. I wanted to sort of jump in with the spraying, but with a bit of tips, shall we say, on the masking. What we're going to do is we pull off a nice length. We want to put a piece going across here, so I'm basically just estimating it by sort of bringing the tape close, rip a little bit off. Now to get these sort of tight corners in here, little just tip is just let's just get some scissors, and we sort of, because we've got this like tear shape on there, it's not a good shape for us to sort of do this. In fact, I've got to make sure I cut this the right angle. I just cut it at an angle just to give us a point. Right, just like that, and that point there is going to allow us to sort of get this in position. I don't mind using tweezers as well. I find tweezers I can sort of, you know, because we've got these like tight corners, I do find, you know, coming in with the tweezers, trying to get you on camera and do this, right, but the tweezers can sort of get in places where your fingers can't, because we have got these tight corners. I mean, you might take a bit of time just sort of constantly sort of just getting that tip just right, and then hopefully that is looking good in that shape position just there. Right, and once you've got that position, you know, you're more good. Then we can just basically, we hold one end. When it comes to putting masking tape down, don't sort of work your way along, sort of try and kind of hold one point and then bring it down on the final point, and that way you get more of a straight line. Right, hopefully as you can see there, we've got a nice straight line. Press it down a little bit, come in with the scissors, and we can just nip that right there, just to tidy it all off. And basically I've just done that, going all the way around our engine cowl. You know, you just give it those little cuts and you're all good. And then it depends how competent you are in spraying, because you could go off and mask up the whole wing, But then, you know, that's a load of masking tape being used, and it's more time doing that. I mean, if you're competent enough to come in with your airbrush and sort of just, because I mean, the spray over we're going to get is probably spraying this little area up here on the top. If we just spray on like that, it's going to spray over, spray onto your wing. But if you can come in close, you're a bit competent, you could just spray that area and not actually get overspray. So it's up to you if you want to do the whole wing, but I'm quite happy just to get out what's like this 18mm stuff and just go a little bit across. I'm quite happy to just do that. So a couple of these 18mm. If you don't know, I mean, I'm using Tamiya's masking tape. I have used a lot of masking tape over the years, but Tamiya's always seem to just nicely come on top, and is a good brand to use, right? It's not so tacky that it rips up your paint. It's not so weak that it doesn't stick down, right? And it doesn't like seep through paint or anything like that. It's actually really good masking tape. A little bit expensive, but really good. And these nice dispenser things are really cool as well, just to be able to rip it off. Right, and for me, I'm happy with that going to there. Maybe just trim this up along here so it doesn't fold over or anything. Right, so we're all masked up. I'm just gonna see if there's any questions from you guys. I've got one from Charles. He's asking about is paint spitting. Well, really, if you paint spitting, it could be a couple of things. I mean, I always kind of say clean your airbrush. That is potentially going to be the problem. What we can do here is I'll just show you the problem. You know, 9 times out of 10 is going to be the nozzle just here. Let's bring you in a bit. This nozzle here, you know, it's what builds up here. That's what's going to probably be what's spitting and making it spit. But that's not going to be potentially the only reason. What could also be the problem is your mixture. I mean, potentially your air pressure might be too low and it splutters. Your paint could be too thick, so if it's too thick it could splutter as well. But basically it's those 3 things. It's either paint's too thick, air pressure's too low, or you need to clean inside your airbrush, or even actually you may have potentially bent your needle. If the needle's sort of bent as well, that can sort of mess up your spray pattern a bit, and do all sorts of things. So really sort of check your needle, clean it, and all those good things. That's potentially what's going to be mainly your problem there. So moving along, we've got our black to do now, which is going to be mainly on the underside. So let's just clear off this, because we had our instructions here for the masking, but we don't need them now. Just getting out a bit of a kitchen paper towel. Ran out of, so fingers crossed I won't need any more tonight. But yeah. Okay, now when it comes to black, it's the way I'm going to show you is basically we're going to do the opposite of stuff. So first off, right, we're going to sort of prime this. We're going to get, I mean, we have primed this model already with a primer, but I want to prime the color, the base color for doing black. Now I'm not going to come straight in and use a black. I want to come in with something that is a little bit less than a black. So what I want to use here is Vallejo's 71251 NATO Black. The NATO Black is, I do like this color because it's not a full in your face black, but it looks black, but it's just that toned down from a black, which I do like. Make sure it's all nicely shaken. I'm just going to start off with this wing. Going to blow on the model, just make sure there's nothing on there. All right, getting out some thinners. I've used my own homebrew thinners, but Vallejo thinners is just fine as well. Right, and we're going to go for a standard sort of spray pattern here. Vallejo, I sometimes mix it like 50-50, but you could probably go 60% thinners to paint. Sorry, 60% paint to thinners, because this stuff is, Vallejo is normally sort of pretty sort of on the finish side. Right, so you don't need as much thinners as normal. Right, getting a paintbrush, nice sort of clean one in clean water. Right, and we're just going to mix that up. Right, and going back on the question about spluttering, I mean, this is potentially where you could be spluttering, is if you've put too much paint in, it will splutter. Right, but actually looking at that spray pattern, it's looking pretty sort of all right. So this is going to be a simple, let's just spray this wing section. So nicely coming in as always with a light misty coat. Right, nice and misty, nothing too much, it's just the first coat. This is what's going to be sticking to the model. Right, now I haven't masked up this leading edge here, so I want to be coming at something like a 45-degree angle, and I want to keep at that 45-degree angle at all times. Right, don't go over, just try and keep that nice angle, and you should get a nice sharp line across there without doing any masking. So I'll just cut into air and letting that dry. Somebody's asking about stopping the paint from drying. Well, I mean, all paints are going to really sort of end up drying on the end of a needle. I like to just keep kitchen paper towel near close by, and I'll just kind of periodically just keep on cleaning off that needle. If you're having problems, maybe you're in like a hotter climate, I do recommend, just get it out for you. Got fluid retarder here. I mean, this is a Winsor Newton brand, but there's other brands out there. A simple, plain simple acrylic based fluid retarder, and that will stop the paint from drying so quickly. But do be careful, you put too much in there and you're going to have all sorts of problems. You literally kind of probably put like a drop just in here, and that should help. So I'm now going to, I need a bit more pressure. Hold on. Just need to turn the compressor on, that's the problem I'm having. The PSI from Charlie is, I'm working at about 20 PSI at the moment. We'll come down as we move along with different sort of techniques with this. Alright, so I'm just going to plain and simply just get a good coverage on this wing so that we can work on it. So I'm just doing a light coat now. Right. Whenever it starts to look wet, I'll move along, you know. Ooh, that was bursted out a little bit. But yeah, just if it starts to look wet, just move along, keeping that 45-degree angle on the wingtip, which then, hopefully, as you can see, gives you a kind of a nice sort of sharp line. But you've got to hold that 45-degree angle. spraying inside the landing gear area now. I'm just going to cut to air to dry that off. This is going to take a little bit of time just to get this first base coat down, so feel free with any questions. Right, that's looking a bit drier now, so I'm going to come in with a third coat. So as you can see, it does slowly get darker and darker, get more and more coverage. Just checking the opposite side, because what you can have, if you're getting too close to the surface, you can have it blow underneath and on top of our camo underneath here. You've got to be sort of a bit wary of that. Remember, I mean, always have your face masks and your extractor fans on and stuff. I know I haven't got mine on at the moment, but I'm just doing this wing, and you know, you won't be able to hear me and stuff if I was wearing all that stuff. I feel like I need some more paint now, so let's make up another mixture, because we've almost run out while we let that dry. There we go, that should be enough for this last bit. Mix it again. Right, and then just spray a bit out, see how it's spraying. Right, hopefully this should be the final coat now. Or close to it. Yeah, just to let you know, Retarder, PSI is at 20 at the moment, with a mixture of about 60% paint to 40% thinners. Trying to get in at all the angles. Just checking we're not going to have getting any overspray. Mainly this landing gear, that's taking a little bit long because we've got to get in all those little angles. Because the problem is with like landing gear is you want to kind of spray down into the landing gear, but then it's a little bit hard because then the paint builds up on the top areas and on the edges, so you have to kind of, you know, let it dry, try and spray a little bit in there without it going on the top, and you have to keep on just drying it. It takes a little bit longer, but you know, just keep at it. These paints do dry pretty quick, and especially when you cut to air with your airbrush, they do get there in the end. Right, I think that's looking, we've got some good coverage on that. Right, so hopefully as you can see, I mean, well, it's probably not so easy to see on camera, but I mean, you know, the black, hopefully you can see from that black lid there, it's not a full-on in-your-face black. We don't want to be going too extreme black and just being flat black. Right, so I'm just going to pour this in the bin, what's left in there. Right, I know some people like to pour their paint back into their paint pots, which is absolutely fine. I just kind of recommend that if you've used the manufacturer's actual thinners, yeah, you know, pour it back into your pot or whatever, but I'm using my own personal thinner, so it's probably not recommended, because I do find that different thinners, if you let it sit over time, can mess up the paint. So I'm just cleaning this out now by just doing a bit of a blowback and gurgling it up nice and slow. Don't let it splutter up and do that. You know, just nice little bit of air, just enough that it gurgles a bit. Tip it upside down and get all the bits coming out the colour cup end, rather than you trying to spray them through that tiny little 0.4 needle. Right, should have been using my actual airbrush cleaner, but we'll go again. I like to spray it up about twice, gurgle it up about twice. There we go. And then just spray through until it's nice and clear, which is coming out nice and clear, and that's a good colour, nice good quick colour change, keeping your airbrush nice and clean, because as we mentioned at the beginning, you know, a lot of problems that are ever going to happen with any kind of airbrushing, if you're going to have problems, it's going to probably be your airbrush needs to be cleaned. Right, so with that now got our base colour down, we're going to sort of, because we're doing black, we're going to go about this sort of in reverse. A bit of a vice versa sort of thing to what we'd normally do, because what we'd probably normally do is we'd do some pre-shading of black onto grey. This time, because we're doing black, we're going to actually come along and find a light grey, something that's, you know, almost white but not quite white, but it's a really light grey. I've gone for the Vallejo 71276 light grey, which is one of their sort of new colours they've brought out. Make sure you give it a good shake. We're gonna probably, I want this to be a little bit thicker, so it's got a bit of better coverage, so maybe like 70% paint to thinners. All right, so let's get some of this in here, nice sort of amount. All right, I'm going to mix this up. Clean paintbrush, and we should have a good mixture there. All right, and because we're going to be probably getting in a bit closer, I'm going to potentially bring my air pressure down a little bit. So I don't know, maybe we're going to be pushing like 17, 16, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called pre-shading, right? This isn't what's going to be the color. It's we're going to be putting another color on top of this, but pre-shading starts with take all your panel lines, all your recessed rivets, and all your pattern work, and what we're going to do is just highlight them, bring them out like so. And we need to do this all over the model. Now, whenever I teach pre-shading, you really don't need to be neat. You don't have to worry about making mistakes. This is a weathering process, right? It's weathering is not uniform, it's not square, right? Weathering is very random, right? So if we make a mistake, if we, you know, maybe sort of get better coverage in a spot, it doesn't matter, it all adds to the flavour, right? Plus, we could kill it off later on if we are really bothered about it. That's a bit loud. Now, there's not many recess rivets or recessed panel lines on this kit. This kit has got like a lot of rib work through like a fabric sort of skin. So it's going to be a little bit sort of a tricky sort of spray job to do. I'm just doing all the recesses first. As you can see, I mean, this isn't massively neat. It really doesn't need to be. Right. So that's all the recess areas. Now we've got this rib work, which is a little bit more, it's a bit harder to see, but there is this like rib work going on. So I'm going to try and follow all this rib work. Which actually, because the rib work isn't so pronounced as like our recess panel lines and stuff, I'm actually going to add a little bit of more thinners to this. Right, so it's a little bit more transparent and not as in your face, right? Because really, you know, this rib work isn't probably going to look, I don't want it to look too in your face as say all our panel lines I've just done. So that being a bit thinner, it's going to be a bit of a weaker mixture, so it won't come out as much. Right, so let's just do these now. So really hard to sort of see them. You've got to rotate it in the light. It's a bit rather tricky to see. Sorry if it's a bit quiet, it's just something that you kind of need to concentrate on. So feel free to get any of those questions in. Do my best to answer them. Cleaning off the needle now and then. I could probably bring the PSI down to like 15 now actually, because we are getting in closer, and I have thinned the mixture a little bit more again. So hard to see this ribbon. It's coming along. It really sort of fades as well as it gets to the tip. But yeah, there we go. We've got a bit of a pattern going on through these ailerons. I've got a bit of a pattern on them as well with a bit of woodwork. Maybe even bring out our panel lines a little bit more again. Really sort of show these off. Right, so there we go. Too bad yet. Right, there we go. Got a bit of a pattern going on there. What we're going to do now is change out this colour, right? So let's just tip away what's left there. Right, and this is the beauty that I like about pre-shading. It kind of looks a bit of a mess, but when we sort of move along to the next bit, it actually sort of just comes together so lovely. Right, which is why I say more random and even a little bit messy. It just adds everything, adds that bit more flavour to it. Right, so I'm just doing the usual, let's gurgle up and clean out. Let's put this out the way so I don't mess that up. Gurgle it up, clean it out, make sure it's all good. Got a question here about priming. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always good to prime the model because I mean, the more you sort of put into prepping before spraying, the more you'll find that you end up with that nicer, smoother, more professional, perfect finish to your spray work. Primers just, well, for a start, I mean, it gives you a base color, right? It gives you, I mean, we've got these polyurethane primers. They give you sort of like a really nice, smoother surface. Just makes everything better, and you haven't got any problems of potentially paint peeling up. It sticks to the surface better. It just generally better. But I mean, I have done models before without priming, and I've got away with it. But it just generally stops any potential problems. Right then, so let's move along with the next bit. What we're going to do now is I'm going to come back with our NATO black, only this time we're going to thin this down, you know, a fair bit more, maybe like 70% thinners, right, to paint, so it's got a nice bit of transparency. We don't want to be coming in too thick with our paint because I mean we could just spray on top of this now with a black. If it's too thick, it's just going to cover up all this pre-shading that we've just done, and if that happens, right, we you know, there was no point with doing a pre-shading. We probably have to step back and do that all again, right? So if we have a lot of thinners, right, we're not going to have great coverage. It's not going to cover up all this pre-shading really quickly and really fast, and you know, kill off all our work straight away. It's going to be nice and light, right? I'm just going to pop my pressure up a little bit, maybe up to 18 now. Right, so what we do here is we'll start off with that nice light misty coat. Right, and we're just going to very lightly, with this nicely sort of transparent paint, it'll start to cover up our pre-shading. Right, and hopefully what you'll see is with this first quick sort of coat here, is our pre-shading starts to fade, right, but it's not faded completely. Right, we can still see it, it's still there, but it's not completely killed off. Now you want to wait for this to dry, so I'm just cutting to air, because what tends to happen is we'll spray on top and it starts to, the pre-shading starts to fade away, but actually when it dries, as the paint dries, the pre-shading does come back a little bit more, and we need to, when it comes to doing this, we need to make sure we don't kill it off, right? Which is why we need to have thinner paint. We need to wait for it to dry and just make sure we're not putting too much paint down that the pre-shading just dies off, right? So that's dried. I'm going to come in with a second coat, right? Nice second coat, right? And you'll see our pre-shading is fading away a bit more, right? And we just need to sort of get it to that, ooh, bit too much blasted out there, so you know, let's just let that dry and hopefully we haven't killed that off, fingers crossed. It's just all about waiting for that nice point at which the pre-shading just comes through that nice little bit, and it's just got that nice sort of weathering look. It's not too much coming to the foreground and in your face that it just looks horrible. It just gives you that little bit of weathering. It just basically, it's representing dirt and grime and stuff getting into these recessed panel lines and all that good stuff. And the reason why we're doing it this way actually is, if you look at you know, traditionally we'll go off and it's grey, black pre-shading, then we'll probably spray a grey on top and the black comes through, and like the dirty areas are looking darker, right? But with black paint, it's like we want to, if you look at, like, you know, say an F11, the F117, Nighthawk, you know, those black planes, it's actually kind of goes in the reverse. It's like the dirty areas start to look grey and lighter because of it being black, which is where people sort of get it a little bit wrong. So now this is sort of drying off. The pre-shading is coming back a little bit, which, you know, I probably want to stay away from this area after doing that accidental blast, right? But it is coming back that little bit. So hopefully you can sort of see, you know, you rotate that in the light and you can see this bit of pre-shading, which is almost there. It is actually rather close to what I want that to be now. Right, so I do want to be careful now. I'm just looking at certain areas. I mean, I'm seeing a little area just here and a bit here, which is maybe coming through a little bit more than I want it. So, I mean, maybe I'll just give that a light little blast, little misty coat there. There's no need for me to go all the way over it. You know, just where I'm sort of seeing, oh, a little bit here could do with knocking back a little bit. Again, a little bit here. Right, just keep it nice and light. We don't want to kill off that work we've done. We don't want to have to step back and do some more. So I'm kind of liking that now. It's just got that little bit coming through. And as you can see, although it was a bit messy, my pre-shading, it's no big deal because we're covering it up. It all just blends in and comes together. And it doesn't matter if you're a bit messy, and the messiness sort of adds to the flavour of the weathering. Alright, so I'm liking that now. Right, now this is like a lighter colour of black. So this is where I'm going to come in with some full on pure black, right? So I've just got to clean this out first. Alright, so I'm pouring the leftover in the bin. We're doing our usual, going over and getting out some airbrush cleaner and gurgling this up. So while I clean this, I might read some of your comments. Pico Fix is just saying how he did the sort of the same technique with his P47. He said that worked out well, so I'm glad you've found that to work nicely also, because I do like it. As I said, there are different ways of doing black. I mean, I've played around with a couple of different types, but I kind of find this one the easiest one, because you are in essence, you're still just going off and doing your usual pre-shading, bleaching and post-shading, which you've already done before. All you're doing is kind of like reversing the colours in a way. Another last of this. Tip it upside down, get all the bad bits coming out the colour cup end. And then we'll just spray this through until it's coming out nice and clear. Maybe just like pinch your needle, just make sure the needle tip is clean also. Right, so that's good. Then we're going to do again, well actually this paint is a little bit different because I've actually, ran out of Vallejo black. So I'm just using the Army Painter War Paints. Nice set of paints, good for, they're really good for brush painting, but I've found they do go through the airbrush rather well, and I do like these paints, but they are kind of like a fantasy type colours and stuff, so not exactly historical or modern sort of jets and stuff. But yeah, let's get some thinners in here first. Alright, I'm gonna go for about a 50-50 mix. Right, maybe about 60% thinners to paint. Where's my paintbrush? Alright, so it's kind of a strongish, weakish sort of paint. Right, I mean normally with bleaching, right, I would sort of go thinner, but because we're talking about black here, it's not such a big deal, because what we're going to do here is, whereas bleaching we'd go off and in between the panel lines we would fade the paintwork, we'd make it lighter, we're reversing this, so it's actually, we're going to come in darker in the panel, in between the panel lines, and sort of darken it that way. So, you know, taking this area here, we're coming in with full on black. Now I'm not going to just spray this, let's maybe bring you in a little bit closer. I'm not going to sort of spray this panel, you know, totally black. I'm actually I'll knock down the air pressure to maybe about 15. I'm just going to sort of do Tetris shape, squiggle it. We're going to mottle it in these panel lines. Hopefully, as you can see there. And this is sort of going to bring us to the black colour that this aircraft is kind of supposed to be. Right. And hopefully, as you can see there, that then gives us this lovely sort of lots of greys going on, lighter as it gets to like the dirty sort of panel line areas. And because we're going to mottle this black in there and not just blank it completely out, you know, it's going to give us a lot of flavour going on all round. So I'm just going to do this all over this wing section here, keeping it nice and mottled. Right, and when getting in close with airbrushing, the biting point is really sort of like, you know, crucial in a sense, right? Biting point is always going to be how you're going to get in close and be able to spray these patterns and stuff. Biting point is just pushing down the trigger for air, slowly coming back, right? And it's that point in which, boom, you have that paint just start coming out. When that paint just starts coming out, there's your biting point. And that's what you want to be practicing, holding, maintaining, and keep on going. You do that, and then you can just sort of getting really close like this, do all sorts of squiggly sort of mottly patterns, right? And it just makes your model look really cool when you can just get in that close. I'm just doing the squiggly patterns, mottling out the main sort of flattest areas, because then we have got to sort of to this rib work that we do have on the surface, the main part of the surface of this model. We have got one or two flat panels, which I've done now. Right, so with these this rib work, it's like a diamond thing going on. We're just going to be like in the middle of the diamonds, just kind of putting a little bit of black here and there just to bring them out. And it's okay to like miss some of the diamonds, right? Maybe some diamonds get a bit more black than the others. Right, it's just all about sort of keeping it random. Nothing's, you know, the same. It's not square. I'll just keep it really different, random, weathered. And because we're getting in close, we're going to just keep on cleaning up these needles because they will dry up. Right, even if you put retarder in there, they're still going to dry up a bit now and then. I mean, really, to stop the needle drying up, also trying to go as low with your pressure as you possibly can. Also sort of helps with your needle not drying up. But hopefully, as you can see, we're getting like this nice sort of pattern going on with that sort of rib work. It's not as if I'm filling in each and every single one of these triangles perfectly in the same, just keep it random. Alright, there we go. I mean, hopefully as you can see there now, that's looking like a nice black, but it's got all these different greys and stuff. I mean, that's the beauty about pre-shading. We use this light grey, but because we sprayed that NATO black on it, it just gives it like a nice dark grey to it. And it just mingles in and feathers in, and we get all these different greys and blacks, and it's just keeping everything nice and dark and giving you loads of different types of black and dark light and all this kind of stuff. Really, really, really cool technique. The only thing is now is to go off and do this all over the model. I would recommend that, you know, you give it like a nice light little gloss coat. I use the multi-surface wax floor cleaner, which I've decanted into this bottle. It just, you know, you just spray that on nice and light. You don't have to thin it down, nothing like that. You know, probably like 2 misty coats, and it should just protect it really before you can then demask and really sort of seal it in with a gloss coat ready for deckling. Right, so that is that, and hopefully as you can see also is that we've got this nice straight leading edge going along here. Check also that we haven't had any overspray, which we're looking good. Right, and there we go. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. I'm just going to check out any questions. I've got one question from William here. He's asking about the Infinity Airbrush. It's this one here, the Infinity. They normally come in like a CR plus. Really cool airbrush. It's basically the more expensive, fancier version to our Harder and Sternbeck Evolution, right? Basically with this design, I mean, we do get this bit of an adjustment thing at the back here. Not a massive big deal, to be fair. It's supposed to be a bit more sort of thinner inside here, so that apparently you use less air pressure. What's also good about it is you can sort of, well, I mean, I suppose you could say it's good about it, really. I mean, it is that you can have it in this one. I've got my smaller nozzle and needle. It's got a 0.15 needle in there, which is a really small needle for getting in and doing some really fine small detail work. But to be fair, I could take this needle and nozzle out of here and I could put it in here, so I could do the same job with this one. Really, I mean, it looks cooler. You've got, it's there's the CR plus, so it's got a triple copper coating on here to like withstand stuff like lacquers and enamels. Right, we do have this really cool stuff at the back here where you can sort of set this up so that the needle only goes, the when you push back, it sort of locks as like a memory, so to speak, of where you want. So it stops that trigger guard going back. So it sort of holds your biting point, as what I was sort of on about before. So you can just hold it and you're going to have that paint coming out at the same time. But I don't really find much use for that, to be fair. It's just a really nice looking airbrush. Is it worth it? Yeah, I mean, I think it's about maybe, what is it, maybe 50-70 pounds more than, say, the Evolution. So to have these little extra mod cons on there, you know, it is nice to have. But I do find that I just always end up using the trusty Evolution, to be totally utterly fair, which is a 0.4 needle in there. And I do find with most modeling tasks, a 0.4 needle does pretty much everything, really. I don't feel like I personally need to go out, get my Infinity out with a 0.15 needle in there. That's just me personally, but it's there at hand if I ever need it. So yeah, if you, I don't know, if you want to sort of buy your first airbrush, I'd go for an Evolution every time as your first airbrush. It's you know, you could pay around about 130 pounds for one of these, and it's an airbrush for life. You won't need to get another one ever again. So hopefully that answers that question. We're coming up to like the hour mark and I don't see any more questions. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed sort of, you know, going about spraying a bit differently when it comes to black. It's this pretty sort of, it can be sort of like the same sort of principles when it comes to doing white also. Just checking any questions and answers. Question about lighting. Okay, this one's quite a cool one. I do have, if I mean, I could probably maybe sort of play cameraman a little bit to sort of show you, maybe. Let's maybe sort of just put this off here now. Here we go. Okay. Oop. 1 sec, sorry. Right then, what we have up here, right, these are sort of nice lamps. I got these years and years and years ago. They are around about £70, right, but they are cool because they're on these arms and you can just move it about, bring it in nice and close, right. It's got the proper nice white light sort of lighting that you want. It's not like a yellow light or anything like that, which does sort of help with filming, but also it's also good for cameras. But as I say, it's quite expensive at like about £70. I do have 2 of them, so I've got one coming in either side and it just lights everything up nicely. It's got about 3 sort of long tubes in there also, which is also cool. It gives you quite a lot of light actually. But then over here, you'll see I've got studio lighting. This lighting actually I would recommend for even modeling actually, because they are really cheap. You can pick them up maybe 20-30 quid. They have these massive bulbs. Well, this one's actually got about 4 of these massive bulbs in there. The one over here, that one's got a big massive bulb in there. They give off a lot of light. I know they're quite big, but they're nice and cheap. They give off a hell of a lot of light. It's a nice sort of daylight light as well. Totally recommend that if you're on a bit of a budget and you've got a bit of space for them. Have we got any more questions? No, I think that is it for tonight. So again, I hope you've enjoyed that and you've learned a lot about it. Next week, well, with that all sprayed up, I think we're going to be jumping into some deckling. So yeah, next Friday we'll be decking away. So hopefully you'll be here 6 o'clock on Friday for some deckling. So yeah, again, hopefully you've enjoyed tonight. So until next time, my name is Bobby Waldron, this is Genessis Models, and I hope you've enjoyed.